I'll never forget the day my whole house started shaking because a police cruiser pulled up in front of my gate, sirens off, but the blue lights spinning just enough to let the neighbors know something was up. And there was Linda, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, arms crossed like she owned the place, that smug grin pasted on her face as she barked at the cop. He's trespassing on his own land. If you think I'm joking, I wish I was. But that was the moment it hit me. This war wasn't about property lines or HOA rules. This was about control, power. And Linda, well, she'd picked the wrong guy to mess with. Let me back up a sec, because none of this started with police or drama. It started the week after I moved back to my grandfather's old ranch on Silver Creek Lake. Place was a postcard, sunlight on the water, a dock built with hand-cut boards, that smell of pine sap and old memories. I figured I'd finally found some peace after grinding away in the city for years, you know? But peace doesn't last long around here. Not with Linda sniffing out new blood like a wolf at a picnic. She showed up that first Saturday morning, clipboard in hand, fake smile locked in. "We'd love for you to join the association," she said, leaning in close like we were conspiring, then rattled off a list of exclusive amenities, discounts at local businesses, pool access, the privilege of community. The way she said privilege, I almost laughed in her face. My family's owned this land for 3 generations, since before her little HOA ever existed. So I said, "No thanks, I'm good." Her eyes went cold for a second, but she kept the sweet smile. Then came the not-so-subtle threat. Most folks join up, but refusing can cause problems, and nobody wants that. Yeah, that happened. I shut the door in her face, but deep down I knew it wasn't over. A week later, I got a letter, official letterhead, legal threats, the works. Said I'd violated border maintenance rules, that my dock was unauthorized, and, get this, I was non-compliant with HOA membership. I laughed, but honestly, my stomach dropped. It was clear she wasn't letting go. I called up Robert, my buddy from college who now works as a property lawyer, and he just sighed. "They're bluffing. Let's put some pressure on. Make him show their hand." For a minute, I felt better, but then, 2 days later, another letter. This one threatened foreclosure if I didn't join the HOA and pay up for my so-called violations. Linda had skipped right past warnings and gone for my throat. She was accusing me of disrupting the community, demanding I tear down the barn my granddad built and the lakeside cabin I'd just finished, permits in hand. I was pissed, ready to drive down to the HOA office and have it out. But then I remembered something my granddad always said: this land is ironclad. Nobody can touch it unless you let them. So I started digging through his old file boxes, and sure enough, I found the deed, full of clauses that made the property untouchable by any HOA that came after it. That changed everything. I copied the deed, made a stack of them, and marched down to the records office to make sure every page was legal. Next day, I strode right into the HOA meeting, dropped a letter on the table, and attached a copy of my deed and my lawyer's business card. "You want to talk? Talk to my attorney," I said. But I didn't stop there. I mailed those same papers to every homeowner in the community. If Linda wanted to play the fear game, I was going to play the truth game. That night, she showed up again, but this time she brought backup. 2 cops, flashing lights, the whole neighborhood watching from behind curtains. She hollered, "He's refusing HOA rules." The cops turned to me, and I handed them the deed, cool as ice. One of them read it, glanced at Linda, and just shook his head. "Ma'am, this doesn't look like your jurisdiction." You could have heard a pin drop. Her face went from fire engine red to white as a sheet, but she wasn't finished. A week later, another letter, this time from some big city law firm. HOA was demanding $500,000 in damages. No joke. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, staring at that number, feeling my stomach twist, like maybe I was crazy to keep fighting. Maybe it'd be easier to sell the place and walk away. I mean, who wants to fight an entire board, their lawyers, and a woman who never knows when to quit? But then I looked out at that lake, heard my grandfather's voice in my head, and something snapped back into place. I wasn't alone. When I started talking to neighbors, they all had stories. Linda threatening them with fake violations, fines for stuff nobody else cared about, notes taped to their doors in the dead of night. For the first time, I realized I wasn't the only one she was gunning for. So I dug in. When the HOA called a board meeting, supposedly to resolve the dispute, I walked in with Robert and a file folder so thick it looked like a brick. The room was packed. Neighbors, board members, even people who never showed up for anything. Linda was at the head of the table, but you could see the cracks. I laid it all out. Her harassment, her fake fines, the deed, the law. I even called out that the HOA had violated their own bylaws more than once. The air in that room got heavy, people whispering, shifting in their seats. Linda's own board started looking at her like she was radioactive. That should have been the end of it. But you know what happens when someone like her gets cornered? She gets desperate. A week later, I got served restraining order from the HOA, claiming I'd threatened Linda and the board. I swear, if I wasn't so tired I might have laughed. Robert said, "They're throwing mud, hoping something sticks. Don't bite." So I didn't. But Linda had one last card to play. She staged a public forum at the community center, invited everyone, and tried to spin the whole thing. Painted me as the neighborhood bully, the outsider disrupting peace. I walked in, let her rant, then stood up and looked around the room. "This isn't about me," I said. "It's about all of us. Either we let one person make the rules for everybody, or we stand up and take back our community." I could see it in their faces. People were fed up. But Linda wasn't done. She tried to challenge my grandfather's will in court, claimed it was invalid, that I wasn't the real heir. That cut deep. She wasn't just after my land anymore. She was after my family's whole legacy. On court day, she sat across from me, clutching her lawyer's arm, her voice shaking. But when Robert and I laid out the original will, the signatures, the witnesses, the judge didn't even blink. The will stands. The HOA has no claim. Bang. Done. You could see her world crack right there. Her face drained, her board silent, the neighbors just staring. I didn't gloat. I just walked out into the sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in months, knowing I'd finally put an end to the reign of Silver Creek's so-called queen. Linda? She tried a few more tricks, nasty emails, anonymous complaints, but nobody listened. Turns out, when people see the truth for themselves, it sticks. I got my land, my peace, and a whole lot of respect from neighbors who finally felt free to speak up. That's the funny thing about power built on fear. It collapses the second people stop being afraid. So here's the thing. Never let an HOA bully, or anyone else, rewrite the rules of your life. Stand your ground, trust the truth, and back yourself up. Because sometimes, justice looks like a stack of old papers and a stubborn streak a mile wide. And sometimes, the best revenge is just living free, right where you belong. But hey, let me ask you, who was right in the end? Me, fighting for what was mine, or Linda, trying to protect the community? Ever tangled with an HOA yourself, or seen one go off the rails? Drop your story in the comments. Let's hear about the battles that matter, and maybe, just maybe, help someone else stand up when it's their turn. You know what I mean?